On a scorching summer afternoon, in the sun-baked streets of Sunhaven, the air shimmered like glass under the heat. But the uneasy calm shattered when a 7-year-old girl in a pastel pink jacket wandered toward the gated K9 wing of the police station, and behind those steel bars, two massive pitbulls watched her with eyes that had forgotten how to trust. Officers whispered about them. Rocky and Bella, once heroes, now feared as the most unpredictable pitbulls in the entire state. Some said they weren't just aggressive, they were guarding a grief no human could reach. Then Rocky stiffened. A low, thunderous growl rolled through the hallway as the fluorescent lights flickered overhead. Lily clutched her pink jacket tighter, because on the other side of the glass stood Sophia Miller, the elegant woman in a striking red dress, the only person brave, or foolish, enough to believe these pitbulls could still be saved. And in that single breath, the station fell silent. A connection was forming, one that would pull the little girl, the woman in red, and the two broken pitbulls into a storm far darker than any summer night. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and tell us where you're watching from. Your support keeps these stories alive. The summer heat clung to Sunhaven like a fever that refused to break. By mid-afternoon, the sun smothered the streets in a harsh white glare, turning every glass window into a burning mirror. The police station sat at the edge of the city center, its brick walls shimmering with trapped heat, while the old ceiling fans inside spun slowly, too slowly to offer relief. The air smelled of hot asphalt, dry paper, and worry. In the K9 wing, where the temperature felt even more suffocating, the sounds of gnashing teeth and claws scraping metal echoed like warnings carved into the air. Rocky, a muscular dark brown pitbull with a thick neck and shoulders shaped like carved stone, stalked the length of his kennel with a restless fury. His amber eyes, sharp and volatile, carried a darkness that no handler had been able to reach since the day he lost the only human who mattered. A long scar cut across his muzzle, twisting downward like a cruel memory. Every time a shadow passed beyond the frosted glass, Rocky's growl deepened, a low volcanic rumble that reverberated against the metal bars. Beside him, Bella crouched in the corner of her adjoining kennel. She was smaller, with pale gray fur that looked almost silver under the fluorescent lights. One of her ears folded down, a permanent reminder of past trauma. Her eyes held the kind of fear that trembled even in stillness. Whenever Rocky barked, Bella flinched. Whenever thunder rolled in the distance of her memory, she shivered uncontrollably. She was a creature of instinct, soft-hearted beneath her skittishness, but broken, just like him. Officers walking by always kept their distance. Even seasoned handlers avoided eye contact, pretending they didn't hear Rocky's snarling or Bella's whimpering. The entire precinct knew their story. Two pitbulls who had once been part of a heroic bomb detection unit overseas. Their handler, a stern but gentle K9 officer named Michael Parker, a man with a square jaw, sandy hair, and a quiet kindness that softened even the fiercest dog, had been killed in an explosion on a mission gone wrong. Since then, the dogs had been passed from precinct to precinct, each transfer ending with injury, fear, or chaos. Sunhaven was their last chance, and everyone feared it wouldn't be enough. Captain Raymond Harris, the man carrying the weight of that decision, stood outside the K9 wing reading the latest incident report. Harris was in his mid-50s with steel-gray hair cut short above a weathered, square face. Years of stress had carved deep lines around his eyes and mouth. His shoulders were broad but tired, as if he had spent his entire life absorbing blows meant for others. He wasn't an unkind man, but he believed in reality over hope, because a lifetime in law enforcement had taught him that hope, more often than not, came with a cost. He sighed, low and defeated, then muttered to the two nearby officers, "If no one can get through to them this week, we'll have to sign the order." It wasn't a threat. It was a resignation, the kind that tasted bitter, the kind that left a mark. At that exact moment, the station doors swung open, letting in a burst of dry summer air and a woman who seemed to drag the light with her. Sophia Miller stepped inside, heels clicking confidently along the polished floor. She was a striking woman in her early 30s, with sun-kissed skin, deep brown hair that cascading in smooth waves over her shoulders, and sharp hazel eyes lined with a subtle touch of glamour. Her figure was elegant, enhanced by a fitted crimson dress that hugged her waist with effortless sophistication. Though stunning, Sophia carried herself with a cool professionalism, like someone who knew she was good at her job and didn't need anyone's approval. She was famous across several states as a rehabilitation expert, a trainer who specialized in the dogs everyone else had given up on. Despite her poise and polished appearance, she had a surprisingly warm, wry sense of humor, the kind that softened tense rooms and disarmed even the most cynical officers. Captain Harris looked her over with mixed relief and skepticism. "Miller," he said, shaking her hand, "you're overdressed for Sunhaven in July." "I'm overdressed everywhere," she replied with a casual flick of her hair. "It's part of the charm." Harris smirked, just barely. "They're in the back." Sophia walked through the hallway, reviewing the files as she went. The records were ugly: broken commands, sudden aggression, food refusal, midnight pacing, trauma-triggered outbursts. She stopped at the reinforced glass window that gave her the first real look at the infamous pair. Rocky glared at her, hackles raised. Bella shrank back, trembling. Sophia lowered the folder and murmured thoughtfully, "Two beasts with broken hearts." She tapped a manicured finger against the glass and added with a half-smile, "If you two are scared of my red dress, I'll try not to take it personally." The dogs didn't understand her words, but something in her tone softened Bella's posture. Rocky's ears twitched, subtle but noticeable. Night fell over Sunhaven like a velvet curtain, trapping the heat between earth and sky. The station quieted, lights dimming to a sterile blue glow. Sophia remained in the K9 observation room, leaning against the glass, watching Rocky pace until his eyes reddened with exhaustion and Bella curled tighter into herself. She didn't see aggression, she saw grief pretending to be anger, pain masquerading as violence. "You're not monsters," she whispered. "You're just lost." The next morning, as the sun rose hotter than ever, the front doors of the station opened again. A young woman in her early 30s stepped in. Emily Parker, the late handler's widow. Emily had soft, chestnut-brown hair tied neatly behind her shoulders and wore a simple blouse that did little to hide the fatigue in her face. Grief clung to her like a second skin, turning her once bright blue eyes into distant lakes. Beside her was a small figure, a 7-year-old girl with rosy cheeks, wide, innocent eyes, and a pastel pink jacket despite the heat. Her jeans were faded, her boots scuffed, and her tiny hand clutched her mother's as she looked curiously around the station. This was Lily Parker, shy at first glance but carrying a courage that glowed quietly behind her eyes. While Emily spoke to the receptionist, Lily drifted away, drawn by a faint echo of barking from the back hallway. She paused, sensing something calling her. The corridor leading to the K9 wing stretched ahead, humming with distant tension. Without a word, Lily walked toward it, step by small step. Sophia noticed the movement too late. Harris realized what was happening too late. Emily turned around too late. The chapter ends in frozen silence as Lily's small hand reaches toward the cold metal handle of the Pitbull's enclosure door. The hallway leading into the K9 wing felt unnaturally still, as if the summer heat itself was holding its breath. Sophia Miller, her red dress catching the thin slice of sunlight sneaking in through the high windows, froze the moment she noticed movement at the far end of the corridor. A small figure, barely tall enough to reach the metal door handles, walked with quiet determination. It took her a second to recognize the pastel pink jacket, the blue jeans, and the tiny brown boots. Lily Parker had slipped away. Just moments earlier, Lily had stood beside her mother at the reception desk. Emily Parker, a woman in her early 30s with a soft, almost motherly roundness to her face, had spoken gently to the officer on duty. Her chestnut hair was pulled into a low ponytail, revealing delicate cheekbones dulled by years of grief. Her skin was warm-toned with a faint flush that came from walking in the heat, but her blue eyes were dimmed by loss. Her voice, however, remained steady, proof that she had learned to carry heartbreak without letting it break her outward grace. "I'm Emily Parker," she'd said quietly. "My husband was an officer here before he passed. I just wanted to show my daughter where her father used to work." But while Emily explained, Lily had already locked onto the faint echo of barking drifting down the hallway, like a forgotten memory calling her name. Lily Parker, just 7, small for her age, with a round face, big brown eyes full of a bravery she didn't fully understand, and that ever-present pink jacket, held tightly onto her faded stuffed bear. Mr. Teddy was missing one button eye, but she hugged him like a guardian angel. Now she moved slowly toward the K9 wing, the fluorescent lights casting long shadows at her feet. Inside the kennels, Rocky and Bella had been pacing in agitation when suddenly, as if struck by the same invisible thread, they both stopped. Rocky's ears shot up, his body going rigid with alertness. Bella tilted her head, trembling slightly but drawn forward by a scent. Something familiar, something warm, something long buried in the rubble of their memories. Their breathing changed, deepened, and then the sound of soft footsteps came closer. Sophia felt her pulse spike. "Oh no!" She hurried forward, heels clacking sharply on the tile. In the observation booth, a junior officer named Caleb Holt looked up from his notes with wide eyes. Caleb was in his mid-20s, tall but slightly gawky, with sandy blonde hair he always forgot to brush, and a faint stubble that made him look younger than he was. Nervous by nature, but good-hearted, Caleb often double-checked locks twice out of habit. He pressed his face to the glass, panic flashing across it. "Is that Sophia, the kid? She's going in," he blurted out. But Lily had already reached the heavy steel door marked, "Danger, do not approach." The sign was faded, edges curled from the heat, but she didn't seem to see it, or maybe she didn't care. She pushed the door open. The warm, humid air of the kennel corridor rushed over her like a furnace. The smells, wet fur, metal bars, cleaning chemicals, mixed with the underlying thick scent of fear and tension. Lily didn't flinch. She stepped forward until she stood before the 2 cages. Rocky let out a low growl that made the metal vibrate beneath her fingertips. His muscles coiled as if preparing to strike. Bella cowered, but her eyes never left Lily's face. Officers behind her shouted, muffled, frantic, overlapping each other. "Stop! Get her out! Lily, don't move!" But Lily turned her head only slightly, her voice nothing more than a soft whisper. "It's okay. You're not bad. You're just sad, right?" The words slipped into the heavy air like a drop of water falling into a still pond. Rocky's snarl faltered, his brows knit together. Bella's trembling slowed. Lily gently pressed her small palm against the scorching hot metal bar, then lifted Mr. Teddy toward them. "This is my friend," she said. "If you won't hurt him, then you're not scary." Sophia burst into the hallway just in time to see Rocky lean forward, nostrils flaring as he sniffed the bear. His breathing hitched. A rumble crawled from his throat. But it was not a growl. It was something softer, like a cry trapped beneath years of hardened instinct. Bella stepped closer too, her nose nudging Lily's fingertips. Sophia froze, hand hovering inches above the alarm switch. Every instinct screamed at her to pull the girl away. Every rule in her profession shouted that this should not be happening. But her eyes widened as she witnessed something impossible. Rocky lowering his massive head until his muzzle touched the small hand on the bars. Lily giggled softly, the unafraid, airy laugh of a child who had not yet learned the weight of danger. Rocky's tail twitched. Bella pressed her forehead to the cage door. Something shattered inside Sophia, her cynicism, her doubts, her logical assumptions. She stepped backward, stunned into silence. Later, when she reached the office to report what she saw, an old folder slipped from the shelf. A photograph fluttered out and landed at her feet. Sophia picked it up, and her breath caught. In the photograph were Rocky and Bella, younger, cleaner, eyes bright with purpose. Beside them was their fallen handler, and a little girl with pigtails and a pink jacket. A girl identical to Lily. Her hands trembled as she turned the photo over. The words, written in a child's uneven handwriting, read, "Rocky and Bella, Daddy's brave partners. Love, Lily." Her voice cracked into a whisper. "Lily, could it really be the same child?" The chapter ends as Sophia stares at the picture, realization dawning, while Lily, still inside the kennel corridor, stretches her hand further toward Rocky's cage. The days that followed unfolded under the relentless heat of Sunhaven's summer, the kind of heat that made the sidewalks shimmer and turned the police station's walls into radiators. Despite the oppressive weather, something gentle, almost miraculous, was taking place in the canine wing. Lily Parker, always in her pastel pink jacket no matter the temperature, returned each afternoon after school, her small steps echoing through the hallway, like a ritual the station silently learned to anticipate. She carried her worn stuffed bear, Mr. Teddy, tucked under her arm, and she sat cross-legged beside the kennels as if she belonged there more than anywhere else. Rocky and Bella responded as though the sun itself dimmed for her. Rocky, a muscular pit bull with dark brown fur and an intimidating presence, had begun to soften around the edges. Whenever Lily placed her hand gently on the bars, his snarls slowed, his breathing steadied, and something that looked like recognition flickered in his amber eyes. Bella, the smaller gray pit bull with one folded ear, had grown bold enough to wag her tail, timidly at first, then with increasing confidence as Lily chattered to her about school, friends, and the picture she was drawing of their pack. The station felt lighter, almost hopeful. Even the officers noticed. Sophia Miller, dressed each day in a different shade of red, from ruby to wine to scarlet, sat nearby with a clipboard balanced on her knee. Her hazel eyes watched the dogs with an intensity softened only by admiration for the little girl who seemed to do what science, skill, and experience could not. Each time Lily laughed, Bella's tail thumped the floor. Each time Lily leaned closer, Rocky lowered his head to meet her hand. Sophia scribbled notes, her elegant handwriting dancing across the page. Responds to tone, memory triggers, calming bonding. From a distance, Emily Parker observed quietly, her hands clasped to her chest. She stood with a delicate grace shaped by years of grief. Her late husband had been the dog's handler, and now she watched her daughter heal wounds that adults couldn't even touch. Tears often glistened in her eyes, but they were tears of softness, not sorrow. Even Caleb Holt, the rookie officer in his 20s with messy blonde hair and a chronic tendency to worry, seemed less tense these days. He peeked in from the observation window, hopeful that maybe these beasts weren't beasts at all. But hope was fickle, and summer storms had a way of tearing it apart. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon in thick gold waves, the sky shifted. Black storm clouds crawled toward Sunhaven like an advancing army. The air grew heavier, thicker, electric. Thunder rolled from one end of the sky to the other. Sophia sensed the change before the first raindrop fell. She paused mid-note, brows knitting. Rocky had stopped pacing. Bella stiffened. Both dogs lifted their heads in perfect unison, ears pricked, forward. Then came the crack, sharp, violent, of the first lightning strike hitting somewhere near the station. The power flickered. The lights buzzed, dimmed, and stuttered back to life. But the short burst of darkness was enough to unravel the fragile peace. Rocky erupted. A furious bark burst from his chest as he hurled himself against the metal bars with all the strength of his trauma. Bella whimpered, then growled, then hurled forward with him, caught in the same spiral of memories. The boom of thunder had pulled them back to that night overseas. The explosion, the sand, the screaming, the silence. Panic surged through their bodies like wildfire. The kennel doors rattled violently. "Rocky! Bella!" Sophia shouted, rushing forward just as another bolt of lightning lit the entire hallway in blinding white. The electricity stuttered again. A buzzing crackle. A flash. Then the lock shifted. The faulty latch, long scheduled for replacement but forgotten under paperwork, jolted loose. The door swung open half an inch. Rocky slammed into it again. The door burst fully open, clattering hard against the wall. Bella bolted out behind him. "They're out!" Caleb's voice cracked through the intercom, trembling with panic. Officers scrambled. Sophia sprinted down the hall, heels slipping on the smooth tile as she grabbed her radio. Outside, the storm broke in full force. Rain poured in relentless sheets, slamming into the pavement, washing the city in chaotic gray. Rocky and Bella shot across the yard, dark shapes streaking through the rain like shadows fleeing a nightmare. Sophia burst through the front doors into a wall of wind and water. She was instantly drenched, her red dress clinging to her legs as she shouted into the radio. "2 Pitbulls on the run, heading south toward the river park." The dispatcher confirmed. "Copy. Storm surge alert in effect. Bridge area unstable." But Sophia was already in her cruiser, engine roaring. Meanwhile, across town, Emily's old sedan sputtered as it crawled along the road beside the river. The storm hammered against the windshield, wipers swiping frantically, but barely keeping visibility. Lily sat in the passenger seat, hugging Mr. Teddy, anxiety flickering in her big brown eyes. Then, the engine died. Emily tried again. Nothing. Rain drummed against the car roof. The smell of wet asphalt filled the cabin. "It's okay," Emily murmured, brushing damp hair from her face. "We'll wait it out." But Lily wasn't listening. She was staring through the fogged glass, wide-eyed, breath held. "Mommy," she whispered. "Mommy, look." Through the white curtain of rain appeared two shapes, muscular, dripping, unblinking. Rocky and Bella stood in the middle of the deserted road, staring straight at the car. "Mommy, it's Rocky and Bella," Lily gasped. Rocky barked once, sharp and urgent, then turned and sprinted toward the park entrance. Bella followed instantly. Without thinking, Lily flung open the passenger door. The storm swallowed her instantly, drenching her pink jacket, splattering mud against her jeans. "Lily! Lily, come back!" Emily screamed, scrambling out into the rain after her. But Lily was already running, tiny boots sinking into the muddy ground, chasing the only two creatures who had ever listened without judgment. The last image of the chapter freezes, Lily disappearing behind the thick curtain of rain and trees, her voice faint under thunder. "Rocky! Bella!" as Sophia's radio crackles in her cruiser. "Be advised, 2 canine Pitbulls have escaped containment, last seen near the old Sunhaven bridge." The storm swallowed everything else. The storm had swallowed Sunhaven whole. Sheets of rain hammered the pavement with relentless force, turning streets into silver rivers that reflected the flashing emergency lights streaking across the city. The sky growled with thunder, as if mourning something lost. The air smelled of wet asphalt, pine sap, and fear. Sophia Miller gripped the steering wheel of the police cruiser so tightly her knuckles blanched. Her red dress, now soaked through, clung to her skin beneath the navy blue patrol jacket she had thrown on. But her elegance hadn't faded, only taken on a fierce, storm-torn edge. Stray strands of her dark brown hair whipped across her face each time wind blasted through the half-open window. Her mascara had smudged slightly beneath the rain, but her hazel eyes burned brighter than the cruiser's sirens. "All units be advised," she spoke into the radio, voice steady despite her racing heart. 2 canine Pitbulls, Rocky and Bella, have breached containment. Suspected location near Riverside Park and Old Sunhaven Bridge. A child may be with them. Static crackled back. Another voice. Sergeant Dean Whitlock, a large, broad-shouldered man in his late 40s with a thick salt and pepper beard and the rigid posture of someone who had spent half his life in the military, responded. Whitlock had a face carved from weathered stone and a habit of speaking bluntly, shaped by years serving overseas before joining Sunhaven PD. He distrusted dogs, not out of cruelty, but because he had once lost a squad mate to a K-9 mishap in combat. That history had left him cautious, too cautious. "Copy that," Whitlock said. "But Miller, if those dogs are unstable, we can't risk civilian casualties." Sophia gritted her teeth. "Those dogs just saved that little girl once. They're not a threat." Whitlock's sigh rumbled through the radio like a second thundercloud. "Let's hope you're right." Meanwhile, deep inside Riverside Park, the storm twisted the landscape into something dangerous and alive. Rain pounded leaves and turned soil into slick, treacherous mud. The old wooden sign reading Riverside Nature Trail thrashed in the wind as Lily Parker stumbled across the path, following the 2 Pitbulls deeper into the darkness. Rocky and Bella sprinted ahead, shadows against the flash of lightning. Rocky's muscles rippled beneath his soaked dark brown coat. Bella's pale gray fur clung tightly to her sides, her drooping ear shaking with every step. Both dogs kept glancing back, making certain Lily was still behind them. Lily's tiny boots splashed through puddles and sank into mud. Her pink jacket was drenched, water dripping from her sleeves, her stuffed bear pressed tightly against her chest. "Rocky! Bella! Wait for me!" A sudden crack ripped through the air. Not thunder, earth. Lily skidded to a stop just as the ground beneath her gave way. The heavy rain had softened the soil along the grassy embankment, turning it into a collapsing slope that slid toward a narrow ravine in the roaring stream below. Lily's feet went out from under her. She fell sideways, rolling, grabbing desperately at clumps of grass. Mud smeared over her jacket, her jeans, her face. She slid toward the drop, boots scraping against the earth. "Help!" Her scream tore through the storm. Rocky and Bella whipped around instantly. Rocky bolted first, his powerful legs kicking up mud behind him. Bella followed, crying out in panic with a high-pitched yelp that cut through the rain. Lily's fingers clung to a thin root protruding from the muddy ground, her legs dangling over the edge. The stream below churned violently, swollen with storm water and broken branches. Rocky reached her first. Without hesitation, he lunged forward and clamped his jaws onto the back of her pink jacket. Careful, precise, strong. His paws dug into the mud, sliding but fighting. Bella charged beside him, grabbing Lily's sleeve and pulling with all the fragile strength her sensitive frame could muster. The ground continued collapsing under their combined weight. Rocks tumbled downward. A thin tree branch overhead snapped, dropping like a spear, grazing Rocky's side and slicing open a long gash. He yelped, but didn't let go. He tightened his grip, growling, not at Lily, but at the storm trying to take her. Lily sobbed, clutching Rocky's fur with one hand, reaching for Bella with the other. "Don't let go, please!" Rocky roared against the wind and heaved backward with everything inside him. Bella pulled too, her gray body shaking with fear but refusing to release the child. Inch by inch, sliding, straining, claws dragging trails through the mud, they saved her. Lily collapsed against Bella's chest, wrapping her arms around the Pitbull's neck as the dog licked rainwater from her cheeks. "You two, you're my heroes," she whispered, voice trembling. Sophia crashed through the tree line moments later, drenched, panting, mud splatter covering her red dress. Her breath caught at the sight. Lily alive, Bella pressed protectively around her, and Rocky standing despite the crimson streak of blood washing down his side. Sophia dropped to her knees beside Rocky. Rain dripped from her eyelashes as she touched the wound carefully. "Rocky, stay with me," she whispered. "You're not done yet. You still have a job to do." Rocky blinked slowly, leaning into her palm. Sirens approached. The cavalry. Patrol cars skidded onto the muddy trail entrance. Red and blue lights rippled across the rain-soaked forest, like reflections on shattered glass. A vehicle from Sunhaven Veterinary Emergency Unit arrived, driven by Dr. Nathan Acker, a lean man in his early 40s with sandy hair pulled into a short ponytail and rectangular glasses fogged by the humidity. Soft-spoken and gentle despite the exhaustion lining his thin face, Nathan had built a reputation for risking far too much for injured animals. He rushed forward, his calm voice cutting through chaos. "Let's get him on a stretcher. Easy. Watch his side." Bella refused to leave Rocky's side. Lily refused to leave Bella's. It looked almost ceremonial. 3 broken souls bound together, refusing to separate. At the veterinary clinic, hours later, fluorescent red letters over the operating room door glowed. "Surgery in progress." Emily held Lily tightly, brushing wet strands of hair from her daughter's forehead. Sophia sat on the floor against the wall, her red dress still stained with Rocky's blood. Her hands trembled, though she tried to hide it. The door finally opened. Dr. Nathan Acker stepped out, exhausted, dark circles deep beneath his eyes. Emily stood. "Rocky, is he going to make it?" Nathan pushed his glasses up with a weary sigh. He's stable for now. But there's another issue, one involving the department's evaluation of both Pitbulls after tonight's escape. The chapter ends on the stunned faces of Emily and Lily, and Sophia's hand clutching the torn hem of her red dress. Summer softened its grip on Sunhaven as the weeks passed. The searing heat that once pressed heavy on the streets mellowed into a warm, golden lull. Cicadas hummed lazily in the background, and trees on the station grounds stood lush and full, their leaves rustling gently under a forgiving breeze. The sky stretched clear and sapphire blue, as if the storm that had nearly taken everything had never existed at all. Yet everyone in Sunhaven remembered. Today was proof of it. Rows of uniformed officers filled the courtyard of Sunhaven Police Department, their shoes polished, their badges gleaming under the late morning sun. At the front stood Captain Raymond Harris, every inch the commanding presence he had always been. His square shoulders seemed broader, his usually stern, silver-gray eyes softer. Weeks earlier, the weight of making a life-or-death decision had carved deeper lines into his weathered face. But today, he carried a different weight, a pride he rarely allowed himself to show. Beside him stood Emily Parker, her chestnut hair tied neatly, her gentle features brighter than they had been in years. The sorrow still lived behind her blue eyes, but today that sorrow held hands with gratitude. Lily Parker stood in front of her mother, wearing her pastel pink jacket despite the improving weather. She refused to take it off. She said it felt like Daddy's hug. Her brown hair was pulled into small, bouncy pigtails, and her cheeks glowed with unfiltered excitement. Beside her, towering already despite their calm posture, were Rocky and Bella. Rocky looked stronger than ever. His once ragged wound had healed into a bold scar etched diagonally across his ribs, a warrior's mark. His dark brown coat gleamed, freshly brushed, and his amber eyes, once filled with rage and grief, now burned with loyalty and fierce protectiveness. Bella, smaller and sleeker, shook her pale gray fur every few seconds, trying to ignore the ceremonial ribbon tied around her neck. Her one drooping ear gave her an air of endearing shyness, but her eyes shone with relief and belonging. And then there was Sophia Miller, standing tall in her signature red dress, the summer sunlight catching in her brown hair and turning it to molten bronze. Today she had added a thin gold bracelet, subtle but elegant, with a tiny paw charm hanging from it. She had the satisfied, slightly amused expression of a woman who had fought tooth and nail for something, and won. Her composure was flawless, but the pride in her warm hazel eyes softened her whole face. Captain Harris cleared his throat and approached the microphone. His deep voice sent a respectful hush across the courtyard. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "we gather today to honor two members of our K9 family whom we once misunderstood." He paused, scanning the crowd, then turned slightly, gesturing toward Rocky and Bella. His voice carried more emotion than many had ever heard from him. "We called them dangerous. We called them unpredictable. But when it mattered most, Rocky and Bella risked their lives to save Lily Parker, daughter of the late officer Michael Parker, who once served bravely beside them." A collective breath rippled through the crowd. Emily clutched Lily's shoulders gently. Lily stepped forward and reached up to stroke Bella's neck. "I told everyone," she whispered loud enough for the audience to hear. "They're not bad." Her voice, soft but unwavering, sent a stroke of warmth through the courtyard. Bella leaned her head into the little girl's touch, her tail giving a shy wag. Sophia's lips curled into a knowing smile. "After this," she said, leaning closer to Emily, I might need to buy more red dresses. I think I've been branded Sunhaven's Pitbull witch now." Her tone was teasing, but her eyes sparkled with genuine joy. Emily breathed a soft laugh, wiping at her eyes. Captain Harris nodded at Sophia's comment, with the faintest smirk before resuming his speech. "From this day forward, Rocky and Bella are officially recognized as honorary K-9 officers of Sunhaven Police Department." Applause exploded through the courtyard, echoing off the station walls. "Furthermore," Harris continued, raising a hand for quiet, "they will retire from active service and be placed permanently in the care of the Parker family, under the continued supervision of rehabilitation specialist Sophia Miller." Lily squealed in delight and threw her arms around both dogs at once, her tiny body swallowed between two broad, warm necks. The crowd melted into smiles. Emily pressed a hand over her heart, tears falling freely. She knelt toward the dogs, placing her palms gently atop their heads. "Thank you," she whispered, voice trembling. It felt as though she were speaking not only to Rocky and Bella, but to her late husband as well. "Thank you for watching over our daughter." The ceremony ended in a swirl of cheers and photographs, but the true celebration unfolded later that afternoon at the Parkers' home. The sun hung low, casting a glowing, honey-colored light across the small front yard. Lily ran laughing through the grass, the sprinkler turning the air into diamonds around her. Rocky barreled through the water with clumsy excitement, while Bella danced nimbly beside him, occasionally bumping him with playful sass. Sophia arrived with a bag full of toys, chew ropes, rubber bones, and treats shaped like tiny hearts. "You two aren't beasts anymore," she announced in mock severity as Rocky snatched a toy from the bag. "You're practically celebrities." Emily stood on the porch, looking out at her daughter, the dogs, the sunlight. She held an old photograph of her late husband with Rocky and Bella, both younger, brighter, fearless. The wind fluttered the edge of the photo, carrying memories with it. She looked back at the yard, at Lily's radiant smile framed by her pink jacket and brown boots, at how the dogs guarded her even in play. The grief in Emily's chest loosened, allowing space for something warmer. Hope. As the sun dipped beneath the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of orange and pink, Lily finally slowed down. She sat on the front steps, leaning against Rocky's solid side as Bella rested her head on Lily's knees. A soft breeze lifted the hem of her pink jacket. "Welcome home, Rocky. Welcome home, Bella," she whispered. Both dogs closed their eyes, breathing deeply, as if settling into a peace they once believed they'd never know again. In this busy world, we often forget that small miracles still unfold quietly around us. Not always as a blazing light from the heavens. Sometimes, it's simply love arriving at the exact moment it's needed. A tiny hand reaching out to heal two broken hearts, or two pitbulls who once seemed lost, finding their way home again. Some people call it fate, others call it luck. But sometimes, if you listen closely, you can feel it. It's God's gentle arrangement. God doesn't always send angels with white wings. Sometimes, He sends a little girl in a pink jacket who can see goodness where others see danger. He sends a mother brave enough to love again. He sends a woman in a red dress who believes wounded souls deserve a second chance. And sometimes, He sends two pitbulls to remind us about loyalty, courage, and love with no conditions. If this story touched your heart, even just a little, remember this. God is still creating miracles in the everyday world, even when we don't notice them. Open your heart, and He will show you the next one. May God bless you and your family with peace, health, and His guiding light every single day. And if you believe the world needs more stories of hope like this, please share this video. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and the last miracle you've experienced. And don't forget to subscribe, so together we can keep spreading faith, love, and warmth across the world. God is here. Miracles are here. And tomorrow always holds hope.